Hello. Hello. Um, Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Miseducation Forum. My name is Britton Smith, and I'm representing one of about 20 individuals, counting 17 Black artists who make up the Broadway Advocacy Coalition. Since our inception in 2016, we've been committed to centering those most directly affected by racism at the table to identify what change is necessary and where it happens to achieve maximum impact and sustainable impact. I got to start off by being transparent first. The last time we met, I had butterflies in my stomach and fear in my chest for the risk of telling the truth, which is ironic because it's our duty as artists to tell the truth. Today, I'm showing up a little differently and choosing to imagine what kind of artist would I be if my gifts were never tampered with the ideas of white supremacy. And I know that today, as we center this conversation around students, Black students in particular, I want you to breathe with me and imagine what kind of artist would you be if your gifts were not tampered with by ideas and notions and standards of white supremacy. Can you breathe with me? So I can imagine with you. Imagining how big and powerful and bright. Yeah. In June, nearly 6,000 of us witnessed the unearthing of a lot of truth with our first forum, Broadway for Black Lives Matter again. We learned a lot about our beloved theater community. We centered the stories of Black industry professionals and offered the gift of listening to our white allies and institutions. It was a moment of reckoning, acknowledgement, and accountability. So many of you all learned the whispers of racism that exist and have always existed. So many of you texted me and called me and was like, oh my God, I didn't know. A lot of us felt seen for the first time. And somehow your blinders were taken off. I'm grateful for that. Because some of us thought that because Broadway was diverse on stage, that surely the Broadway industry was one that was equitable and just for all. But we learned that nothing tells the truth better than stories. Experiences are telling of culture, structures, access, and history. We heard from LaChance that she still has to walk into a room and make sure that people know who she is and treat her well, despite their notions of her Blackness. Now, we also learned that those in power, like our government, don't reflect us all, therefore they cannot adequately serve and support us all, which makes some of us feel like we were never actually a part of their vision. We also learned that our stories are evidence that something is wrong. So our industry is beautiful and worth fighting for, and so are our students. And they're being trained to exist in an industry that we are calling unjust and racist, but the training students are getting are still perpetuating these ideas and these notions of how to be successful, but those ideas and notions are rooted in racism. I was trained in a predominantly white institution and stripped of a lot of my natural essence. And I know that as a Black student, as a Black actor, I am not alone in that story. So you're gonna hear stories today of other Black students, Black alumni. You're gonna hear from major institutions. Our favorite institutions will not be called out, will be uplifted as examples of moments and targets of change. So I say all that to say, welcome to the Miseducation. This forum challenges the curriculum, the policies, and systems that contribute to the perpetual cycle of racism that exist within our current structures of learning in our predominantly white institutions. I want to hand it over to my wonderful partner and colleague, Michaela Bartholomew, to give us some guidelines of how we're gonna exist and listen in this process. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Britton. And hello, thank you so much for interpreting for us today. My name is Michaela Bartholomew. I am one of the members of Broadway Advocacy Coalition. And to start off, similar to what Britton did, I'm going to say that I am nervous, and I was also a part of our first forum, B-Way for BLM. There are butterflies in my stomach creeping up to my chest right now, and I just want to acknowledge that and recognize it. To all of our students, our Black students that are tuning in this evening, I want to honor you for being here. I want to say thank you. You are brave, you are courageous, and you are doing an incredible job in this fight. Everyone else, we're glad you're here. So I'm gonna go over a few community guidelines that are gonna come up on the screen. And when we go over these, we're going to say them out loud together if we can, all right? Community guidelines. This is a day for listening, understanding, healing, and mobilizing. An opportunity to take responsibility and accountability for any and all behaviors, individual and institutional, that perpetuate racism within the educational theater institutions. A move to divest from any notions that conflict with the idea that Black lives matter and commit ourselves to creating more equitable, inclusive, and safe spaces. We ask that you enter with open minds, open hearts, and open ears. Please leave your egos, titles, and any spirits of offense at the door and lean in. We acknowledge that the heinous murders of innocent and unarmed Black men, women, and gender nonconforming at the hands of police, and the subsequent protests, marches, and riots have awakened our nations to what most of us have known, seen, and lived for far too long. We are grateful for our brothers and sisters organizing in our communities on our behalf. Their labor has made it possible for us to be here today. We believe that those who are directly most affected by the very levels of systemic oppression should be allowed to speak and be heard first when cultivating policies and actions of reform. Tonight, we are gathered in the name of confronting white supremacy as it stands in educational theater programs across the globe. We are asking many to reopen wounds and relive trauma in an effort to help members of our industry understand their role in creating work environments that have been abusive, hostile, stifling, unsafe, and racist. You are seen, heard, and affirmed. We welcome and encourage all constructive ideas, thoughts, and experiences to be shared without judgments or fear of retaliatory actions. I will say that again. We welcome and encourage all constructive ideas, thoughts, and experiences to be shared without judgments or retaliatory actions. There are hundreds, thousands of different voices, opinions, and experiences in this room that all want and deserve to be heard. We've provided opportunities for some to speak and share, but unfortunately, there is not enough time to address everyone at the end of the forum, however. Should you need, there will be an outer space room for you to speak and decompress anything that comes up for you and needs unpacking at this time. The bulk of our work must be done outside of this forum to begin making necessary changes within our industry. The racist elitist structures in our theater training institutions have maintained a homogenous presence in our fields for far too long. With that in mind, we ask that you remain present and patient with us as we take careful steps to ensure accountability. We also acknowledge that much of the work done in these spaces may be challenging and uncomfortable, and 120 minutes is only enough time to begin to unpack years of pain, silence, and suffering. Once again, we have created a post-forum breakout room dedicated to our Black community viewing this evening to offer additional mental and emotional support. We welcome both humility and discomfort, for it is at the crest of those two that an opportunity for growth lies. Thank you guys so much. And now I am going to pass it back on to Britton Smith.
Thank you, Michaela. Thank you. Let's get to work, y'all. Okay, so our first panel, I'm going to introduce the panel, is a panelist of 4 artists of color. Each panelist was committed to meeting a Black student who is currently enrolled in one of our industry's favorite institutions. Y'all are sitting there like, favorite institutions? What does that mean? What do you mean the industry's favorite institutions? You know damn well what I'm talking about. So we have targeted these schools because they represent institutions with a high level of influence in our industry. And so because of their influence in the industry, our industry is waiting to see who graduates from them every year, right? So we want these schools that I'm about to name to lead the charge in creating an anti-racist program because they have the power to influence both the educational and professional intersections of the theatrical landscape. So these schools are, and we know you're out there because you've responded to our emails, CMU, NYU, Pace, Yale, CCM, UMich, BWU, AMDA, NCSA, BOCO, Juilliard. Now, if you are not on that list, don't be offended. We didn't make up this list. These are the people that the industry thinks are great. So we did that on purpose. It's important to know that when our panelists come on, they have met with students who are currently enrolled, Black students who are currently enrolled, and we will be keeping their identities safe. They come from one of these named schools, but we will not disclose their gender identity or their names to keep them safe. And we thank them, as we know that they're listening, for giving us their stories. But before I bring on these panelists, in BAC fashion, we've asked an artist, Broadway artist, his name is Ahmad Simmons, to demonstrate through dance the experience of a current student of color in one of our industry's favorite schools. You're gonna see a collaboration between Ahmad and this student, and immediately after this performance, you will meet these panelists. Yeah.
My success. My race should have nothing to do with my race to success. But when it comes to my race, my success is no longer based on the talent I possess. It then stands on the backs of people who used to oppress. The system in this industry was built the same as the one that only considers 3/5 of me to be equal to your one me. So how can you say we? Diversify the stage. How about we diversify the platforms that train me to believe I can only play a role that was written for someone like me, realistically speaking? In the world, it's hands up, don't shoot. In our world, it's mics down, don't sing, stand still, don't dance.
Thank you, Ahmad. I thank you for driving right now. But is there some weird delay? Real quick. How are we? Is that better? All right. I hear like a weird. I hope that's not. Technical difficulties. Well, here we go. Okay. So let's bring on these panelists. There are four incredible artists. I'm sure you know. Our first one is Ray. He's an incredible playwright. We bring to the stage Sierra Renee, an actress and activist. I bring to the stage Cody Renard, our Broadway Sim, and I bring to the stage Andy Jean, an incredible designer and new friend of mine. Bring him in! Bring him in! Hey!
Hey, hi.
Yes! Hey, y'all.
Hey, y'all.
How are we feeling?
Wow.
Great. Yeah. I'm so excited that last piece was formed in the same way that like we formed our conversations here, but we wanted to make art, so we leaned into that, and it was very moving, and I'm excited by that. But I'm also very excited to see all of y'all. Thank you for your time. Thank you for committing to meeting these students, and thank you for being brave enough to link your experience to theirs, so that we can make it clear that if systems are not changed, these stories will continue and continue and continue. So first of all, again, thank you. I want to lean in right away. Let's start with Sierra. I don't want you to tell me where your student went, but was there something that stuck out to you as, oh, I identify, or something that when you met your current student from one of these institutions that we named earlier, that you felt connected to it?
Yes, so many things. And, you know, in school and also in working professionally, you know, I've dealt with things that they have spoken about. I think in particular, just the overwhelming feeling of like not really being seen for who I am, and being seen for a color, or being, you know, like being put into a box, being seen through the lens, like a very limited lens, and feeling stifled by that and oppressed by that, and on so many levels, and having to fight back against that, to express who I am and expand who I am, and to learn in a safe way, and just how that oftentimes doesn't feel available to me and to so many people that I also went to school with, and I witnessed, you know, their journeys as well.
Thank you. Andy, was there something that stuck out to you after our conversation?
Yes. Hey, everybody. How y'all doing? Hey. I would definitely say I think the things that we had spoke about was always the feeling of isolation, and that you're always having to defend your point of view, and that it becomes exhausting. It's exhausting having to only be the only person there. Whenever there's weird questions, like you have to be the representative. But also it's like you don't see yourself. You can't see your vision of success, right? Because your path isn't outlined. Your path isn't shown. It's only the white gaze. And that your success has to be adjacent to whiteness.
Let me start here also. You know, I was so excited to go to a white institution. I thought that that's what you had to do. If you were Black and talented, that means you could do all the white things. That's what I thought it was. And I think that is an idea that is really still present. Would you guys mind sharing what school you all went to, and if you had that same type of "this is why I need to go there," or is that separate from you? We'll start with you, Jure.
So I went to Yale School of Drama, and I think that we had good assets to look up to others, but I went to HBCU, and I was always told that the reason I went to this HBCU was so that I could know who I was when I got to the white world, and then I arrived at Yale and then realized they didn't know who I was.
Where'd you go again first? I'm sorry.
Morehouse House.
Oh, you went to Morehouse first. So for those who don't know, Morehouse is a HBCU. So it's still a predominantly black school. So he got your black pride deep inside first, and then went to the other side.
So in a way, I was like almost trained to be a token, but I didn't realize they weren't trained to have a token. It's a two-way street. That's what I mean.
What about you, Cody?
Yeah, my experience is very much similar to yours. I went to Webster Conservatory in St. Louis, and the only options for school for me was going to a conservatory or going to one of the white institutions that could, offer me connections outside of the school. So that was one of the main reasons why I went. So,
Sierra?
This is such an interesting thing. Like, now that we're having this conversation about education, I have had to really go back and understand like my level of understanding of racism, like my knowledge of it. Because unfortunately growing up, I just kind of internalized a lot of the racism that I dealt with and just thought it was me. I just thought I was the problem. So like, I guess now that I'm looking back on it, obviously I realize so much of what I dealt with was racism. So I went to BWU, I guess is what it's called now. It's just called Baldwin Wallace when I went there. But I think, again, because I didn't understand that what I dealt with for most of my life was racism and that it wasn't just like my fault. Like it didn't even occur to me that there was a Black college that I could go to. I had no idea. I was like, there's like NYU and like CMU and like BW, I guess. Like, I don't know. I had no idea. I was like, these are the ones that I've heard of, So yeah, I truly, it didn't even register to me at that time that there was another option.
On our call with your student, Andy, it's so hard to not say people's names or what they, I want to be very careful to not do that because we told them that they can have our trust in that. But on our call, Andy, someone said, our faculty, we have 37 people on our faculty, and my entire time being here, 2 of them have been of color. One was Asian and one's a Black woman that's not there anymore. And I have heard that in several calls. It was definitely in my life. I didn't have Black faculty at all. Can you talk about your experience at NYU and what the faculty was like there? And if there is any link or comparison to yours and the student that's there now?
Yes. So I went to New York University, Tisch School of the Arts, and it was very similar in that I think for me, I was, really, I guess, kind of led to believe that if you want to be successful, if you want to be hireable, you have to go to an institution where people respect, right, where the education is revered. And so for me, I definitely felt that, but I knew that we had to work at it. But being there, it definitely was a sea of whiteness. Now, shout out to the white people, but it wasn't something that I had to keep in mind because I knew that even when I graduated, I wouldn't have the opportunities to design those shows, right? So that I knew that I still had to hold space for myself and still hold space for the kind of work that I knew that I would be compelled to work on and the work that I could create. And so the faculty was definitely disproportionately white.
Sierra, Jure, what was your faculty like at VW and Yale when you went?
It was white. It was just all white. I think I remember having one Black male teacher. He was the conducting teacher, and the pain in that man from what he had to deal with, being the only like Black teacher in maybe the whole school, like maybe the whole school. I couldn't tell you if there was anybody else. There certainly wasn't anybody that, in our conservatory that I felt like I could really like go to or, would be supported by if ever I needed to speak up to anybody. It just was kind of, we're on our own.
Yeah. We're on
So-
roll.
I mean, it's not a surprise, not that many. We had a guest lecturer who was an African-American female who came in the experience during my time there, and that was it in the playwriting program. But I think I just want to share that I had like the added benefit of having a chair of the department who was of a Shakespearean culture. She was a Brit who had transplanted herself into Connecticut with a almost monarchy idea of how to run a program. And so I got like some real white supremacy in my experience as well. So in addition to not having faculty of color, I got more authenticity to my white supremacy than I would have liked.
And then, like, I think to echo what you're saying, we had a conversation when I was at school about like, is there a way for us to like rectify or to amend having diverse faculty? And the answer that we always were met with is, well, you know, we just want to make sure that we're, you know, doing the best for our students. So whoever comes in, they have to be excellent. And I was like, oh, okay. So then what about you all?
Yeah.
You know, and so literally, I mean, and this came from different faculty. Like, oh well, yeah, like of course we'd love to have, you know, more diverse representation, but they would need to be excellent.
Yeah, and I gotta say, in school and in the industry, everybody is not excellent. Everybody, most of my Black friends, I'm like, yo, you bad, you are it. My faculty was not excellent, was not. And so there is this barrier to even like enter for Black people who are excellent, and you can't tell me that they don't exist. There are people saying, well, where are they? Where'd you find Karen? Where'd you find so-and-so? So there's a disconnect to even first. What are you gonna say, Dre?
I just want to pop in because this is the like revelation that I am met with. Your earlier provocation of like, what would my imagination look like it had never been tainted by white supremacy is that the definition of excellence is going to change with different cultures, right? So if I do my favorite version of the Blackest musical I can think of, the likelihood is my white professor isn't going to like it. They won't find that excellent. Their lens is actually going to be a really different lens. So even this notion of it needs to be excellent is one I've been pushing up against because who says, right? And then often who says is not the person for whom's lens it's created for.
And sorry,
you brought up something like on our last call, Andy, about the standard of excellence, right? And how you tried to produce something, and because it wasn't in a white lens, it wasn't even thought as to be excellent. I thought it was excellent. I thought it was fabulous. But because of who you're giving it to, I imagine like other students of color are trying to share their definition of excellence, but because there's nobody to foster it, it gets debunked.
Agreed. Yeah, I mean, I will definitely say, I think something that I often challenge those folks or people with access, the gatekeepers, is that you guys, that we are, as POC, often invited to come interview. However, you're not really hoping to include us, right, at the table, which is a problem. We are often met with, well, we love you, we think you have great energy, charisma, potential, but you don't have the experience. And I just am like, okay, well, we're always told we don't have experience. So then how can we ever achieve excellence, right? If we're always met with these same prohibitors, right? That somehow, if only we had 2 more years of experience, or if only we had went to this grad school, if only we had done this internship program. And so for me, like, it's something that came to head while I was in grad school about, you know, wanting to do a thesis project. And I was really interested in exploring the film Beloved and feeling like, well, what would that be if we could reimagine that house, reimagine Setha's experience, and what does it mean for a Black woman in this period to have to sacrifice in order to make sure that she could survive, right? And we know what that sacrifice was at the end. So, yeah.
This makes me think about something that you said earlier, Cody. You're excellent. I've worked with you before, and there is this, man, if only you were a little older or had more experience. And we know that there are white stage managers, PSMs, who are your same age who don't have to do that? Are there things that can happen in the institution to like combat this understanding of who's ready for what role? You've been ready. How can that be taught to students who feel like they have the readiness to participate but not the access?
I don't know. That's tricky. For me specifically, I feel like if I had a Black mentor in college, I would have moved into this industry with a different sense of awareness, I guess. And I think that probably I wouldn't have seek so much validation for these people to give me these certain jobs. And I think that if across the board, if there were more people mentoring and bringing up Black professionals and managers, I think that can challenge the way we look at people entering the workforce. Like I had on the call, like we were talking about, it's I'm looked at as a very young stage manager, even though like you said, there are white stage managers the same age as me, PSMing and doing these jobs, who's been doing it for a very long time. But because I'm younger, I have to prove myself time and time and time again. And that's kind of what the systems have put in place. So until we start to just open the door and cultivate and put more people in those positions to welcome us in, that's kind of the cycle that we have.
Yeah, I had to kind of do the same thing, Sierra, is like look back and be like, have I ever? Damn, I've never even had a Black mentor. Everybody who's been in my life, and I have fabulous white people who have done great things, but they have done great things in their whiteness. I want and deserve a fucking Black mentor. Like, I want that so bad because there's a different like understanding, and I want it for our students in schools too. I mean, like, was there something that you heard on your calls with the students that you were like, damn, if you would have had somebody Black on faculty or Black near you to help foster your growth, you wouldn't have had that experience, or you would have been supported after that traumatic experience? Anybody?
I mean, yes, for me. I had a really interesting experience because obviously my institution tried to put me in the box. They're like, oh, you're going to sing the song that all the 3 or 4 other Black women who have gone through this program over the last 20 years have sung. Here you go. And so lazy, I know. And it's just limited, just really like so small. And I was like, absolutely not. And I kept pushing back against that, right? And I think in a way I earned like a level of respect between me and like my director at the school. And so I had like an interesting relationship with her. However, even all of the work that I had put in, all of the like extracurricular things that I had done for the program, like I had become like this like leading face for the program in all these ways. As soon as I experienced like really real like aggressive racism in the institution outside of the conservatory, when I like came to my program heads and I was like, I need your help, like I'm being attacked. They were like, oh, well, it's outside of the conservatory. This is something that we don't understand. You know, we don't want to put our noses where we don't understand things. Like just played Switzerland and like almost got me expelled. Almost like, oh yeah, like after being the star student, the one that they put in front all the time, I needed their help and was 100%. It was like just full on racism. There was no reason for any of the things that were going on. I had the police called on me. It was like craziness. And I was just left waving in the wind. In fact, one of the professors actually kind of turned on me and was like, oh, well, if you're not, because I was so angry and I said a lot of angry things about the program because I felt lonely. And he was like, well, if you're not grateful for your spot here at the program, then you can go. And like literally had said that to the dean, we were in a discussion about whether or not to expel me from the school for having done nothing.
Can we just talk about that just real quick? Why do people feel like Black people need to be lucky to be in these spaces? What is
right? Right. When I was, and I say this humbly because again, it was big fish, small pond thing, but like I was 150% the person that was leading the way in so many areas. I was like the lead of all the shows. I was, I was like being very excellent and very hardworking, and still I had to just be grateful.
Right.
I was like, no, I like 100% earn this, and I work every day to continue to deserve this. And that's what I was met with. It was really, really tough. And I didn't have, they're just simply, like I said, I think maybe I saw one or two Black, faculty member in the whole school. Like, so I had no one to go to.
I mean, it's so funny because I feel like oftentimes we talk about, and not only actors, but also like designers as well, is that like as a Black creative, as a Black artist, you don't want to be pigeonholed, right? So like, yes, I can do Memphis, but I could also do any kind of other musical, right? So that's something that I think really, really we have to talk about because it's disproportionate. And oftentimes those members, and even in our faculty, they are burdened by whiteness, right? Because you're the only one. So you always feel like that there is a pressure for you to perform, pressure for you to deliver, and it's not fair. It's not fair.
I used to be so hurt when they would give me songs just for Black people. I begged, can you please give me Santa Fe from Newsies? I really want to sing about a home. I really want to, and I always got River in the Rain. I got Whole House. I'm just like, that's not even my essence. So when somebody is not able to look at the nuances of who you are as a human, and they only see your skin, and they want to like ready you to be booked, it's dangerous. It's really dangerous.
I also like, yes, and I think the hierarchical imagining of I can give anybody anything is just wrong in theater, that we are all collaborators. And so the minute anybody, and I think this is especially toxic for institutions, the minute that anyone thinks that they have done someone a favor by collaborating with them, which is to say, I've done you a favor by inviting you to this institution, or I've done you a favor for hiring you to perform this role in this production. Any moment it becomes, I've given you something, I think there's already an imbalance of power that is problematic for being a theater collaborator. That if we are all collaborators, that the thing I bring as a writer and the thing you bring as a stage manager and the thing that you bring as a designer and the thing that you bring as a musician are all equal. And including the casting director or the producer has put this together. That really fundamentally, for me, I always now am trying to remove the language of I gave someone a job, or I gave someone a shot, or I gave someone opportunity, and I think that is a part of white supremacy that we haven't quite eradicated from our industry, because it's so common to be like, yeah, her first job was on a show I did, or my first job, so and so gave it to me. But that's not actually how we should be thinking about these systems.
Yeah, I mean, I will also say, don't get me wrong, okay? We are ready to do a little Into the Woods, The Sound of Music, all of that. But I feel like there is a standard of excellence that isn't applied evenly to all of the folks and to all of the students. Especially when we think about for our faculty, when we discuss a standard of excellence, is a Broadway credit, a Tony Award, is that what makes you excellent? Because we know many amazing artists and teachers and advocators who are doing the work, right? Who do work that challenge, that investigate, and that really bring a community together. But if they are not awarded a Tony or some kind of merit, does that mean that they're not excellent? And does that mean that this person does not deserve a position at the table? Because I just feel like the seat at the table, there is power in relinquishing power. And so if you have that access, you should be able to stand up and let someone else sit. But I feel like people aren't ready to do that. And I don't want to get, but at this point, fuck fear. Because I already know that my path is not one that is cleared before me. Because I don't have that privilege. This skin color, this melanin, I'm going to always have to fight to tell my story. And I'm not tired yet. Period.
Come on. And students out there, If you're tired, we are with you. Tired goes like this. And when I'm tired, I hope you're not. And when you're not, like, I hope we can be in there, you know? I'm so happy to be out of school, I have to say. It feels so good to be unlearning some of these things. And also, like, out of my parents' house. You know, I'm able to learn and unlearn the things that I need to be the best that I need to be as my full human, as my full artist. Just in response to something that you said earlier, Dre, you know, there is this standard. And I think like you said it too, Andy, is like, there's this standard of what excellent is. And I think students are also being taught that excellence looks like you working at MTC. Excellence looks like you having classical training and singing through your nose. Excellent looks like this. Are there things that you want to go ahead and debunk so that students who are listening can hear from real people doing the work? That is not true. Actually, excellence is blank. If you can, with these students listening, tell them, each of you, what the truth really is. We'll start with Cody.
Oh, I'm up first. I would say, you know, excellence is whatever you make it, you know, because I think as Black people, you know, this hashtag Black excellence is something that we created, and also that we sometimes strive to get, but also like just being you and just like doing the work that you're called to do and just showing up and trying your hard and sometimes failing is excellent. Like, you don't always have to be, you know, jumping from Broadway show to Broadway show. You don't have to be doing all of these things to be excellent. As long as you're doing the work that you're meant to do and you're actually giving it your all and you're happy at the end of the day with what you're doing, and you're inspired, that inspires people, like to for that true transparency of you showing up and doing your job the best that you can. I think that is what I consider to be excellent. So you don't have to strive to get out of school and get your equity card real quick. You know, you don't have to strive to get out of school and, you know, book a Broadway show. You have to do whatever is in your path, and whatever comes your way, if you succeed in what you're doing, that is what I consider to be excellence, or Black excellence, or whatever we want to call it. That's what I think it is. Just showing up and doing what you do the best as you can do it.
Despite fucking capitalism.
Correct.
Like, do the thing. Don't follow the success trajectory. Be excellent. I love that, brother. I love that. Who wants to go next? I don't want to throw it in you. Andy? Yeah. Oh, I think you're muted, and we need every word.
Oh, thank you. Oh, thank you, beloved. Ooh, hold on. Yeah. I will definitely say, in regards to excellence, as a Black trans storyteller, I'm already excellent. Period. And I really feel that we have to now, with our understanding, right? Because we've had a lot of time to reflect, for people to read up, for people to educate themselves. This is now the time to really put that change into motion, right? Like, we need for these institutions and folks to really step up to the table. We are not here for just a temporary change. We need real justice, and we need real action. And it should not feel performative, right? I always say solidarity should be felt. I don't need it to necessarily come in the form of an email. Yes, I appreciate that email, but to me, it should be felt, right? We should know that our faculty and our folks stand up for us, and that way they continue to advocate for us. I want them to advocate for us when we're not in the room, because that's when the real power happens, right? When the folks with access can really come together and make those changes. So for me, yeah, excellence looks like me, because I know that I possess that power. Thank you.
I love that it's not in relationship to a standard that we're being taught. Anybody who to the rest? You're telling me to wrap up, but I need it, please.
Yeah, I mean, look, I feel like excellence is integrity, it's authenticity, right? It's all about showing up as your best you. And you know, since I know that there are students on here, and when I teach and do master classes and stuff, I'm always trying to impress on them that if you don't if you aren't doing the continual work that you will do for the rest of your life, the continual work of figuring out who you are, what you believe in, what your priorities are, like what you're good at, what you can be stronger at, if you are not consistently a student in your life as well as in your art, if you're not consistently seeking and curious and doing all those things, you're not going to be excellent. You will reach your cap. And you can sit, honestly, like, because we do not have a system at present that is really a meritocracy, right? Because we have a system that is so much about all these other different influences that aren't just about your merit and your talent, like you have to, you just have to know you, right? Like you have to consistently be moving past what they say. It's like, oh yeah, it's cool. You can fit inside this box. Perfect. We'll take you. Honestly, you could have like a cute little career like that. You know what I mean? And just be stuck in this thing and not expand. And it's like, if you are consistently doing the work of being authentic to who you are and like being curious about how that changes and grows, you're going to be able to expand outside of that and be able to kind of upend the system that we're currently in. I think if we're all moving in that direction and being continual students, then the mediocrity principle starts to get pushed off the side, you know?
Jure, you want to bring us home, man?
Yes to that. I have quick, but I want to cite my sources because it might bless somebody. There is a great book called Theater of the Unimpressed by Jordan Tannehill that I share with all of my students. And then the Bible says wherever 2 or 3 are gathered, and that's where I think excellence is. I think that the minute that we create community and we're doing art for our community, whatever that community might be, it's excellent. It is excellent because we're here, we're doing it, and we're taking risk.
Yes, ma'am.
I just want to add one more thing. Just like I love that community, right? Because I feel like a lot of what has harmed Black people and BIPOC people in our country and this industry, right? It's the divide and conquer. It's like, how does the systems that be, how do they push us away from each other and keep things secret and make us feel higher or lower than each other? You know what I mean? And so I think one of the big things that I'm noticing in these conversations that I'm having with current students now about what changes they would like to see, what I keep hearing is that they need community and they need support. Right. And if these institutions want to really come and start fixing things like that, getting into the idea of equity, right? And really showing up and supporting BIPOC students in the way that they need to be, especially with regards to their healing and their emotional and mental well-being, all of those kinds of, if we're not like creating this space for them as a part of the curriculum, as a part of what's necessary to bridge the gap that's been created by the inequality in our systems and industries, like if those institutions aren't thinking in that way, like we're going to continue to have so many issues and problems and issues of access and resources and support. And so I just wanted to add that because that is just something that I keep hearing is that they really want to feel community with each other and that it's safe and okay to do that. Yeah. And that I hope is something that is foremost in these institutions' minds as they are thinking about how they're going to revamp this system.
Right. And institutions, please know that not only should you revamp your system, but you have to, because students and actors are not showing up to these rooms the same. Whether you decide to change or not, we're changing internally and like realizing, and we're fed up and we're ready for you to do the work, to receive us the way you should have been receiving us this whole time. So if you're not doing the work, it's important that you start to do so. And if you are doing the work, thank you. I have to wrap up, but I want to say thank you so much for your like brilliance, your honesty, your time to connect with these students in real time and speak for them and link your own experience to them to prove to people listening that these things will continue and continue and continue if systems aren't changed, if our curriculum isn't changed, if like mentorship is not just an idea that we're hoping for. You know, you guys said a lot that I hope people really listened to and heard and felt as they start to do their own change work. So thank you so much. Thank you so much. Wave to the internet.
Thank you for the invitation.
Bye. Yeah. Thanks, guys.
So, thank you. Bye, beloved.
Thank you. Our next panel will be led by Michaela. Michaela, are you there? Are you ready? Nice.
Thank you so much, Britton. I don't know why I was about to call you Brandon. Don't know who that is. Before we start with the introductions for panel 2, I would love to say thank you to our 2 ASL interpreters, Lynette Pinkard, which is right next to me, and Elizabeth Traeger. You guys are making this space accessible to not only some people who need to be here, but everybody that needs to be in this space. So I thank you so much for being here. Now, for our second panel, we will be talking with 2 educators, one from an HBCU, Howard University. Now, if you're in the audience, you look like this, 9 times out of 10 went HU, and then for Black people, you respond, I didn't go to Howard, but I wanted to participate and say thank you, Howard University, for being here. And we also have a teacher from Virginia Commonwealth University, which is my personal alma mater. So I will introduce Eric Ruffin. Eric Ruffin is a faculty member from Howard University. Eric is a director, a teacher, and he has helmed from regional productions like Lyric Rep, Mosaic, Young Playwrights, the Kennedy Center, the French Embassy, the US Supreme Court, come on now, Studio Theater, Crossroads, the African Continuum, Imagination Stage, Luna Stage, and George Street Playhouse. For both Howard University and Rutgers University, he has directed numerous main stage productions. Ruffin, yes, I said that right, is a performer and former Drama League Fellow, Folger Shakespeare Fellow, Princess Grace Awardee for Dance, and New York Theater Workshop Usual Suspect. His direction of Langston Hughes' Black Nativity was recognized with 3 Helen Hayes Awards, including Best Musical. He's currently a commissioned artist for Studio Theater and also serves on Woolly Mammoth's board of directors. Both of those theaters, if you don't know them, are theaters in Washington, D.C. And Dr. Tanya Pettiford-Watts. Dr. Tanya Pettiford-Watts is a mentor of mine and former teacher, is a fully ranked professor that received her degrees and certificates from the Central School of Drama, Speech and Film in London, Carnegie Mellon University, and the Union Institute. Her credits precede her, but to name some cool ones, she was on Twin Peaks, as well as the voice of Fo Hamer in Halo, the video game, and also was an original cast member in the Tony Award-winning production of For Colored Girls Who Have Considered Suicide When the Rainbow Was Enough. Whew, that was a mouthful. Dr. T is not only a teacher of Black theater, solo performance, ritual poetic drama, and more at Virginia Commonwealth University, but is also the founding director of the Conciliation Project, which is a social justice theater organization that's based in Richmond, Virginia. These 2, just having them on like our pre-call in tech this morning, are already going to be so incredible to listen to. So I'm hoping we can go ahead and get ready to get them all on screen. Dr. T and Eric Ruffin, are we here? We're here. We look good. Looks good. Oh my gosh, you guys look wonderful. Wow. Hello. Thank you for being here.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Yes.
Thank you for having us.
Absolutely. Yeah. They're necessary parts of the conversation. So to get started, I guess I just kind of want to hear before we get into the juicy stuff, what interested you, when BAC reached out, when we were like, hey, you want to be a part of this panel? What was it about this work that made you feel, as educators, as artists, also as Black people living in Black bodies in America right now, interested in speaking up and taking this platform?
Well, Dr. T, you want to start?
Sure, I'll start. First of all, Michaela is one of my own, and I feel very close to her and the young people, you young advocates in the Broadway Advocacy Coalition. we are so incredibly proud of you for what you are doing. Because we are at an inflection point in our country's history with the double pandemic of the health pandemic with the COVID crisis, as well as our racial reckoning, which has been 400 years in coming. And so this is a perfect moment in time, not only to have the conversation, but to press the conversation forward into action, which we always get incremental action. I have to say, I've been around this barn a couple of times, and we get things, right? We get things happen, and also things slip away. But the basic structure and framework with which we're working inside of that of white supremacy has never been touched in all of those 400 years. So here's an opportunity, and that's why I was interested in coming on with you today, to just have this conversation. So, Eric?
And I'm a big proponent of the sort of art of war. You need multiple strategies in order to wage war. And there's something about, these elders, myself and Dr. T, we've been through PWIs, either to direct, as students in many ways, and now I teach at an HBCU, and so I've seen the differences in sort of pedagogy, and I just think it is a wonderful opportunity to sort of pass on whatever we know so that you all can strategize anew with all of this information and really bring about change, really bring about change. It's so entrenched in the entire industry, including academia, that it's going to take us waging war on multiple fronts in order to dismantle it.
Ashe.
I think just touching on both of the points that you guys were making there, as teachers who have experience in predominantly white institutions, both formally as students and as educators. Eric, I know that you taught at Rutgers, and Dr. T, you've been at VCU for at least 15 years at this point, I believe.
16 years.
16 years, let's go. And now you're fully ranked as a professor, full term. I kind of want to talk about what kind of policies may perpetuate racism in an institution, and how, as an educator or even as a student, do you identify where those are? I know that's a heavy hitter to start with, but that's where we're at.
Well, and I'm not always going to go first, so just Eric. Well, let me just say that I came from my training, Carnegie Mellon although I have not visited there in many, many years, is the epitome of the white structural systemic racism and the power structure of white supremacy that is inculcated in academia, period, from top to bottom. So when they invited me, I had been teaching for a while in Seattle. So I went from New York to Seattle, and I'd been teaching for a while there. And when they called me to Richmond, it is not someplace I had ever considered moving to, the capital of the Confederacy. But my question to them was, since I had been teaching for a while and I knew who I was, that are they inviting me to their party and they want me to wear their clothes, or are they inviting me to their party and I get to wear my own clothes, right? So, because I was not interested in wearing anyone else's clothes but my own. And so that basically, in answering your question about the policies that perpetuate white supremacy within institutions of academia, is that when they invite you to the party, they're not prepared for you to come. Like, they might tell you that you can wear your own clothes, but in point of fact, when you show up with your own clothes, you feel like you're at the wrong party.
You're an imposter.
Because they have made no preparation whatsoever for you to come and be authentically yourself and contribute authentically in the vein of an African-centered perspective. They have not prepared for that. They just want you to continue to do Stanislavski, right? But dressed, but you can wear your dashiki, but just teach Stanislavski. Right. So I'm the preparation, and that's not only for faculty, but it's also for students.
Yeah.
They have not prepared the soil for the faculty of color, BIPOC faculty, and the students of color that they are asking to receive. They just want you to assimilate, right? Literally, that makes it much easier for everybody.
There's a federal mandate that says if you're to receive federal funding, this is for universities and colleges, you have to have a certain percentage of diverse student body. So that's the university's encouragement to bring brown bodies into their space.
Yes.
For no other reasons than to receive federal funding because you have a diverse student body. Another thing that happens in theater institutions is that folks will look at the fact that 70% of the narratives that are happening on American stages have a white male at the center of the narrative. 70%. So then as they consider their programming, as they consider who they're bringing in, they're trying to fulfill the needs of an industry that doesn't really see and recognize people of color, Black folks, and women. So, they're really trying very hard to serve those Black men or those white men who will ultimately be the leading men, be these A-listers in Hollywood, or get to play all of the Shakespeare all year round. And the rest of us, we're sort of marginalized and we're there. I don't know if we're going to play trees, if we're going to play...
Second sword carrier from the left.
Second sword carrier from the left, and just be lucky that you're the beneficiary of this legacy of the, Stanislavski and Ibsen and
Chekhov and
the list goes on, all the dead white men.
Absolutely. And I think, oh no, please, Eric.
Those are just like some institutional things that sort of govern how we show up to the space and feel obligated to operate with our double consciousness, feel obligated to code switch, and you'll spend 4 years in that space of code switching and then graduate and realize, wait, no one's going to hire me to code switch. They're looking at me to do August Wilson, and I've spent 4 years not embracing who I am unless I go home on the holidays.
No, I think that's an incredible point that you make. I think from my own experience, that was exactly what happened to me in school. Was Dr. T had just returned from a year of sabbatical when I started school, and every role until I was able to choose on my own terms to be in one of her courses was playing a brown or Black body on stage to service the fact that we are a diverse school, right? So I can be a soldier with a sword in Macbeth standing in the back with no lines. I could play the little sister in Arabian Nights so that we don't cast white kids as the Arabic students, as the Arabic characters. Or even, at the end of my 4 years at that school, I can do a Horton Foote trip to Bountiful as Thelma because the school is not convinced that August Wilson will make them money.
Right.
And I think that drives to a point that you guys were making about what actually is driving these higher institutions of learning. And it's the needs of these institutions and the industry and not the needs of the people. So I'd be really interested if you guys could speak more to the prioritization of the needs of the industry and the institution over the needs of the student body.
I am so excited for your generation. Because as I look on the streaming platforms, look on Netflix, not as much Hulu, but Netflix definitely. There are so many stories about so many different types of people. So many stories. So that everyone, and I won't say this, I don't know, but just about everyone can tune in and say, wow, I can find a story about me. or people that look like me, or people who are experiencing the world through a very similar lens that I am. And I think that they are dictating what's happening in the industry overall because they've so dominated this sort of streaming platform that others are saying, wow, we've got to have enough talent coming out of our schools to support what's happening in the industry, this significant shift in who gets represented in storytelling in television and film. And so I think it's an exciting time because it's also dictating how the schools are, how many people of color the schools are bringing in. And also because they have these student bodies that are far more diverse than they used to be, they've also got to figure out what their seasons are going to be so that they represent these folks well. I think the biggest challenge that they have is that so much of theater that is Black theater is written for a white audience. It's written for white consumption.
Mhm.
And so, you know, that's where the challenge happens, I think, because there aren't enough stories written by us, for us, and institutions that are serving us.
There are a lot of stories, and I think that the point that you're making about the institutions serving us, you know, and the fact that the playwright, you know, is torn. I mean, August Wilson was always in a battle about this, about why don't you go do your fences at Front Porch Theater in Tennessee, or in, you know, why are you at the Seattle Rep, for example, right? You know, right. And he shouldn't have had to make that choice. You know, I mean, the work of Black playwrights and the stories of us that are told by them are some of the most provocative, amazing stories ever told. They just haven't had the opportunity to be produced at the levels of a Broadway house or even a major Lort, you know, theater company. Just, you know, they do it for their month. They do it again. Those companies do it again to get the grants, you know, because they, you know, so you can be their diversity profile, so that you can be their photo op, and so that they have something to offer for Black History Month.
And there's not a real investment in cultivating audience, serving our communities. Because if there were real investment, there wouldn't be this one-off every year where they get a cash cow. They'll do some big Black show in February and, you know, break in lots of money because we're so underserved that when something hums, we race to see it. And then the rest of the year, you know, we're erased.
I mean, there was a theater in Seattle that used to do Black Nativity every Christmas. So that was their cash cow, right? So they would do it every Christmas, right? And, you know, and then not do something Black during February, for example.
We don't exist the rest of the year.
Yeah.
But our dollars show up with Black Nativity and underwrite everything that they do for the rest of the season. And I think that's one of the things that, you know, generation right now is able to leverage that dollar because the demographics in the country are so rapidly shifting. So in the industry, the theater industry is having to confront their audience base because the blue hairs are dying or dead, and there are all these brown bodies that would spend disposable income to see ourselves in our stories, and so they're looking to change. But we've got a lot of work to do. We've got to get the right leaders because they get to choose the season. Those artistic directors. You know, we've got to have, you know, Black directors, and there are plenty of us. Get them in positions to tell our stories as opposed to someone else operating from, I understand the human condition, so therefore I should be able to tell your story. No, you don't understand the nuances.
Right.
You don't.
And then also to that point, because I know Dr. T earlier when we were all talking, we were talking about, you know, how sometimes it's like either that one Christmas show or Black History Month, that is the Black People Make Money time. And with regards to that, with regards to institutions trying to respond to the current circumstances by bringing in a Black director for a show, or like saying, you know, we'll bring this person in to do a master class with you all, but not necessarily knowing what it means to decolonize not only their curriculums, but the entirety of their department, with who is represented in the administration, who is represented on faculty, who the students have access to, what kind of conversations the students are invited to. So if you guys could touch on what it could look like to decolonize an institution, because I know a lot of it's talking about we have to go from the bottom up, right? We can't talk to the people in power. The people that need to be listened to are those that are most directly impacted.
Well, do you want to start, Eric?
I can only speak. Well, I can't only speak. I can speak for what exists at Howard, because, you know, we might look like, oh, Wakanda forever, but the truth is, that you know, we have inherited much of the same stuff.
Yes.
We've inherited much of the same stuff. So here we are in our classroom teaching, you know, Meisner, and teaching, you know, everything that came out of the group theater. And it's only recently, in the last couple of years, that I said, wait. Why am I not affirming the Black body and all the contributions that we have in terms of social dance? So I'm going to make that a part of my curriculum, that every class, we're going to investigate the Black diaspora and movement that comes, dance that comes out of some part of the Black diaspora, so that we understand that in telling our stories, how we use our bodies is unique to us, and you know, and should be incorporated in our storytelling. So, you know, Frantz Fanon is, you know, he says this revolution that has to happen not just societally, but in our own minds. Decolonizing, we have to recognize where we have embraced the colonizers' pedagogy and made it a truth, the sole truth, and like deconstruct that and figure out, wait, storytelling has existed since man has existed. So if the oldest language, the oldest bones, the oldest people are traced back to Africa, storytelling is also traced back to Africa. Yes. So there are all these traditions, concepts, and conventions, aesthetics that we don't learn about because they start us with the Greeks. So
that's right.
We colonize our own minds, and we've got to go back and claim all the stuff that is ours and stop allowing this. I don't know. I'm going to shut up because I'm sucking the air out the room.
We've got to Sankofa. We've got to Sankofa, which is an African principle that talks about go back and fetch it. So all the things that have been lost, taken, stolen, forgotten, we must go back and reclaim those things so that we can have our whole selves intact. So that we can have our whole selves intact. And it has to be recognized. It has to be recognized where the initial traditions of the dramatic form began. And the point is, they began in Africa. They did not begin with the Greeks. The Greeks have a stolen legacy that they retrieved from the continent, right? And they got it they got it through the form without the content. The form without the content. And so that is what has informed the entire Western theater tradition. Informed the entire Western theater tradition. I think that if you're talking about leadership within the academy, I've heard often the analogy being invited to the table, right? Being invited to the table. Well, I want to say the table belongs to the colonizer. And so when you're invited to the table, you're already sitting in a colonial model. So I want to deconstruct the table. Like, I don't want the table. Okay, don't give me the table. I don't need the table. I want to come, and a huge part of decolonizing the academy has to do with shared leadership, and it has to do with listening and hearing.
Ooh.
Listening and hearing, because if you hear when you listen, you will learn. If you hear when you listen, you will learn. And so, we've got this top-down model, and a lot of deans are white males, so the construct exists that it all lays in the dean's lap, and then the dean's responsible to the board of visitors, and so forth and so on. Everybody's passing the buck, and things get cosmetically changed or cosmetically affected, but the disease still remains. The disease still remains. And I'm no longer interested in diversity and inclusion, because I've been around that barn many times.
Yeah.
All kinds of panels, all kinds of commissions, all kinds of meetings, all kinds of talk and lists and strategies and objectives, and none of them get done.
Yeah.
Integration costs.
None of them get done. Yeah.
And, there is a need for our own institutions. There is a need for our own value systems. And instead of always aspiring to be a part of their systems, we should create our own. It's fascinating to me that right now the Black Theater Network is having their conference.
Yes, it's Woody King's birthday. Hey!
It's Woody King's birthday. And, you say, how many people in this room know the legacy of a Woody King, know the legacy of Andre DeShields, who was also, the host for this thing? There is an understanding of all of our contributions. And there's another thing that I'll just throw out there really, really quickly. There was a woman who I learned from when I first arrived at Howard, and she said, she who controls the masses she who controls the images projected to the masses control their self-esteem.
Yes. Barbara Antier, the National Black Theater, that the training that came out of that was rooted in the African cultural continuum, rooted in story, rooted in ritual. And, Barbara Antier is not even, people don't even bring her up when,
the conversation.
Yes. I mean, it should be studied. It should be studied.
Carroll.
Yes, it's part of the canon. It's part of the canon. Yeah.
Don't even discuss them in those classrooms.
Yes. I have to say that mentorship, I heard from the panel that came on before how important that is. And I certainly believe it, because when I went to Carnegie Mellon, there was a man by the name of Israel Hicks. And Israel Hicks also became the chair of SUNY Purchase, and he became the chair of the Mason Gross School of the Arts at Rutgers. He's passed on, so he's one of the ancestors. But Israel Hicks was my mentor at Carnegie Mellon, and I believe I would not be the artist. I would not be the artist I am today had I and the other Black students at Carnegie Mellon, a predominantly white institution, steeped in the idea of conservatory. And I was telling my students, that's conservativory, right? Steeped in that. If Israel Hicks hadn't protected my spirit, hadn't protected me, and so I pass that on to my Black students, I feel a responsibility. I feel a responsibility to make sure that they know who they are and that they know the value that they possess in their authentic selves, and that they bring that authentic self to the classroom space, to the studio space, to wherever they go. They bring their own clothes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to say thank you both, especially Dr. T and Eric, for leaving us on that note. What you guys brought into this space today was letting us know, like, not just some of our educations have been deficient, but everybody's education is deficient. And there is
everybody
to, like, we're not working in silos anymore. It's time to, like, undo the legs of the table and be like, y'all can have that one back. Come to this one. We will work from here. And I think that's so important, because putting this out on a platform where students who don't have access can now have it and know that they can be fully authentically themselves in these conversations with these teachers, I hope is really liberating and freeing.
Can I throw something out there?
Yes,
Where there is a void, you fill that void, and there within you'll find your riches.
Sure, yeah.
As it exists right now does not serve Black and people of color and women.
Yes.
It's a huge void. You fill that void, and there within you'll find your riches. And you won't fill that void by presenting the aesthetics and the conventions that the Europeans have taught you necessarily.
Yes.
All right? There's a reason why Black folks don't flock to the audience, flock to the theater, is because they don't see themselves.
Right.
They don't see themselves in the aesthetics and conventions that are on those stages. You can't throw a bunch of Black folks up there doing the cherry orchard and expect my mama to come.
That's right.
That's true.
See that. So I said, you guys have some wonderful opportunity that's presented to you now, because there is a void, and because the film and television industry sees the capital that can be had by Black folks, both performing and consuming. You better fill that void. It's a wonderful time.
Thank you. Absolutely. And I think as we send you guys out, acknowledging that void, I think, is also acknowledging that disease that is there that I touched on.
Absolutely.
I'm so ready to get rid of the disease. We need a whole new table. We need a whole new bowl to work from. We need new water. Like, everything has to change. So thank y'all so much, Dr. T and Eric Ruffin. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
And, Elizabeth, for translating for us. All right, y'all. So now, hey, we are going to head into our third panel. Thank you for being with us. Thank you, Elizabeth, so much. I'm sweating because that was a good conversation. You know, I'm going to probably tie my hair up and get more comfortable as we get into this third panel of the evening. So I'm going to bring in Jalen. Jalen, are you ready? Hello.
Yo, what's up? Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, you sound great. Have fun.
Hi everyone. Good to see you. My name is Jalen Livingston, and I am a member of BAC. I'm a creative director, and I am so excited to be back with you all today for this Miseducation forum. One of the things that came up in our conversations for our last forum, a couple of panelists brought up that some of these problems, they don't just happen, they don't just start when you get out of school and you enter the professional world. A lot of them get incubated in these institutions. And so that's part of what prompted the conversation for us to actually have a forum completely dedicated and devoted to institutions of higher learning. So I'm so grateful to be with you all today. We have an amazing panel that I think will help us continue hearing some of these ideas that we've heard so far, but also continue to help us put some meat on the bones, right? What does change actually look like? And in my panel, I'm going to be talking to a group of amazing women who are doing the work and have been doing the work and may be new to the work. And we'll have a little conversation about some of the challenges they've experienced, some of the successes they've experienced, and like I said, continuing to put some meat on the bone. Something that I've told to people a lot is that I believe that after this COVID moment is over, after we are able to open up the theaters again, you are going to see the most confident and self-worth filled cohort of artists that our generation has ever seen. And I'm really excited about that. And I think that if we begin to do this work on our campuses, then that will become even more of a certainty, but we will also see the most confident young people we have ever seen. And I think that is almost more important when we're able to go back and be with each other in the theaters again. So I want to bring this amazing group of women to the screen with me and let them introduce themselves, and we'll have a conversation. Hi.
Hello.
Hello, hello.
Hi.
Great. I think we may be missing one person, but she'll pop in when she gets here. So let's do just a round of introductions. And I want you to tell us who you are, yes, but also either what organization you're here representing or what is the work that you are here representing. And tell us a little bit about that work. Give us some context for what you have been doing in this particular moment. Yeah, I can start with Trinity.
Hi, everyone. My name is Trinity Pearson. I am the current president of Black Theater Association, located at Virginia Commonwealth University. What we're doing so far right now is we're just working on getting our list of demands that we've set out to the department, requiring accountability for them. And we've been working with them to get that in motion for the upcoming fall semester.
Nice. Rebecca?
Hello, everyone. Rebecca Kelly G. My pronouns are she and her. And speaking from that last panel about the need to do away with the ways we've internalized white supremacy in that process, I'm going to do that now with just how I tell you how I arrived here, by making sure I'm not rooting just in individualism, but calling on my collective. I want to let you know that I come from a father who is from Harlem, who faced and moved through structural oppression in the violence that is produced by desperation, and from my mother, who comes from Salisbury, North Carolina, who integrated her high school. And both of those people who inform my whole line come from the people who were enslaved in this country, who were taken from West Africa. And I want to name that and root myself and I name that. So that's how I arrive here. The work that I do now in that vein is I support individuals through the healing process. Hi, Vicki. And I work with artistic institutions to confront white supremacy, to move towards justice, to move towards equity. And I want to speak to briefly just my background. I started doing theater when I was 10 years old, doing the shows. That was my guiding light. I went to undergraduate for a musical theater major as well. But because that last panel, I felt like I was invited to the table, but couldn't wear my own clothes. And I really wanted to wear my own clothes. And so I felt like I had this false choice, like, am I going to go out here and explore myself and contribute to society, or am I going to be an artist? Which is a false choice, but that's the message that was given to me through my training and experience. And so I worked as an organizer. I chose to discover myself and move in this way. I worked as an organizer. I moved on to work as a civil rights attorney, working in education, and eventually came to fuse my arts and activism back in New York City, working with Feminist Theater Company as well as with Theater of the Oppressed NYC. So now I pull from all those things to do that work I mentioned, consulting with arts organizations to move towards justice.
Nice. Welcome.
Thank you.
Abena.
Hey, everybody. I've just been hollering since that last panel, but good to meet you. My name is Abena Mensah-Bonsu. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I am the founding director of We Move. We Move is an advocacy initiative by Black AMDA alumni. That's the American Musical and Dramatic Academy, and we were formed in order to seek to hold the institution accountable for the incidents of anti-Blackness that took place there.
Nice. Welcome. And former classmate. Just and Ms. Vicky.
Hi, hello everyone. I'm so excited to hear of this organization at AMDA. That makes me real happy. I'm Vicky Washington. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. I am a theater maker, primarily director, and sometimes still acting here based in Dallas, Texas, and in the Southwest. I'm real happy to be here because I've seen the harm both in my life and in the life of my biological children and my community children and my theater children for quite many years now, as it relates to how white supremacy does its job on us in as we work to tell the stories and that we have in our bodies, in our lives, and in our lives. And one of the things from when we talked yesterday that I really want to make sure that I am really clear about helping folks to having people hear the need for pulling out the toxicity, which is the supremacy that we've internalized to teach us not to value and love ourselves in the ways that we, and our stories, and how we, the clothes that we're in and how we present, to use the earlier analogy. And yeah, I don't know what else you need me to tell you.
We'll talk more in a second. You know, we're going to get off into it like we did yesterday. But first, I want to just talk to Trinity, and then we'll bounce you all back in one at a time and have some individual conversations. But welcome. And as we transition, I just also want everyone who's watching to look at the screen and look at the people who are leading these conversations and these movements and this work. It is Black women. I just want to be very explicit about the work that Black women are doing and have always done and must continue to do, and their work must be centered if we are to have any real change happen in this country. Yeah. Okay, so Trinity, I don't know if I would have had the courage to do what you're doing on your campus as a current student. So maybe can you tell us a little bit about what was it like, or what was your mindset when you were thinking about starting something on your campus? What was that process like? How did you find people to join your cause, and what have you all been advocating for?
Right. So, reverb. Can you guys hear me? Okay. Okay. When we first started our organization, we started it in 2009. I and another an alumni, Kamari Chambliss. And when we first started this organization, it was more so to promote cultural diversity through the exploration of Black arts. But, you know, in light of recent events and the advancement of the Black Lives Matter movement, our mission statement kind of changed. It focused on providing equity for our Black and Brown students. And I think that a lot of times we as students, we think that our opinion doesn't matter, that we are on the lower of the totem pole. And I believe that starting these conversations in our smaller communities really is so important and pertinent for active change. Because I mean, one faculty meeting, I would have never thought that I would be able to reach this big of an audience. I never thought that it would get this far, in a sense. And so we started this, our list of demands started when a fellow student of ours, Amari Cummings, drafted a statement calling for the action of our department, because there was a lack of urgency, I'll say, in speaking up for their Black and Brown students. And it was Amari's statement that called us to, you know, rally behind her and support her as one of our fellow theater artists. And we met with alumni and current students, you know, gathering their experiences at VCU. And what we did was we made a list of demands that will transform the department to be more equitable, and it will hold the faculty to be more accountable for their actions. And it was so important to us to do this and not worry about the consequences, because, you know, I'm probably not going to see some of the changes that we have been fighting for, because I am a senior and I graduate in December, but we're more so doing this for the Black and brown students after us, so that they never have to experience any sort of microaggressions, any sort of prejudice, any sort of implicit racial bias, that they don't have to feel not seen. And, you know, I don't want any of my fellow students moving forward to leave this department, enter the workforce, and think that the mistreatment of them is just a part of the business.
Yeah, I want to uplift the understanding that it doesn't matter how old you are to be thinking about who comes up after you, and to really point out that the integrity of your work is built on community already. And I think sometimes in like moments of, you know, hyper attention to a issue, everyone thinks that it's just about somebody getting shine or somebody trying to be in the spotlight. And what you just articulated really beautifully is that even at the age that you are, at the school that you are, being a current student, you're thinking about people coming up already. And I think that's amazing. And for institutions to pay attention to the place of integrity this work is actually coming from. And speaking of those institutions, what has the feedback been on campus in terms of the work that you have been doing?
Honestly, we have gotten an outpouring amount of support. We have been met with open ears, open minds, open hearts from our faculty, not only from our faculty, but our students, other student organizations on campus. And that has been the most impactful, because when you have people rallying behind you, especially your white counterparts, it is so important. It's so important because they may have a higher voice than you do. They may be listening to them, and when they listen to them, more change can happen.
That's amazing. Is there anything that, I mean, we have a little bit of an audience here today, and I'm sure a lot of your community is watching as well. Is there anything that you all need in terms of support, in terms of guidance, in terms of, yeah, what are some of the things that maybe you all could shout out that we could assist you with?
Yes, I mean, going through a PWI, predominantly white institution, we don't have that many Black professors. So what I would ask from anyone watching, you know, if they're in the area and they would love to mentor other Black theater artists, or, you know, come and speak at a BTA event, just keeping in contact with us would be so helpful in getting and allowing Black artists to look up to other Black artists. And, you know, we are a small organization that, and we just started. So any monetary funds that you can help us to, you know, like do any events that can help, that we can push out to the community, would also be helpful as well.
Yeah, that's amazing. And we're going to make sure that everyone has your contact information for the BTA at the end of the forum. We talk about our resource guide, but we've heard mentorship come up almost in every single one of these panels, that's interesting. Each one of these panels, and you're hearing it now from a current student. So if you're close, even if you're far away, right? Everyone's connecting online. Please reach out and mentor and guide and help and support and uplift the work that students are doing currently. Thank you, Trinity. It's been an honor to meet you and to talk to you. We talked a little bit before the forum as well, and I definitely will be reaching out, and I hope that we see some real change real soon.
Yes, thank you so much for having us here. We really appreciate it.
Okay, cool. So I think now we're going to talk to Abena, kind of give us an alumni perspective of some of this work. Hello, friend.
Hey, friend. Good to see you.
Good to see you. So something that I think is interesting about We Move is that you all are still in the process of posting your demands. Well, you posted your demands, but just negotiating with the school what the collaboration will actually look like. And we don't necessarily know exactly what the end of the journey is yet, right? There's a lot of things that haven't been implemented yet. And I just want you to maybe speak a little bit to what the process has been thus far. I'm thinking particularly about other alumni or students from other schools who are trying to figure out, okay, if we're going to organize something, how do we start? What do we need? Who do we need, you know?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. The best place for me to start would be from the beginning. This all came from the absolutely brutal and atrocious murders of George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, and Breonna Taylor, who still has not received justice. I would say started towards the end of May, early June, when these stories came to light. A bunch of us AMDA alumni had noticed that our school had not put out any type of Black Lives Matter statement. And George Floyd's murder happened on May 25th. It wasn't until May 31st that on AMDA social media, they released a general equality and justice for all statement. Now, if we're talking about the Black Lives Matter movement, that has to be something very specific. A lot of us went then to go on and comment under their social media to hold them accountable. And it was only after that demand, maybe after about a day or two, they released a Black Lives Matter statement. I saw that as completely unacceptable. So I went ahead and, commented about all the anti-Black incidences I remember experiencing at the school, started seeing other comments come out about other racist incidents, and figured, it would be best to gather this information, gather these stories. So I held a virtual forum comprised of Black AMDA alumni as well as Black current students of AMDA, because like I said, I think the specificity is so important in the Black Lives Matter. Oh, sorry, in the Black Lives Matter movement. Somebody's playing music outside. So after gathering these grievances, a bunch of friends then reached out to say, how can we help you with this? And from there, this organization, this initiative was formed. And in that, it was important to me to, with these grievances and problems, also have solutions for them. Like, we can't just wait for them to form the solutions, at least in my head, with holding them accountable, because it hasn't, up till now, hasn't worked. From there, we created a petition with our demands of collaboration with AMDA in order to implement these solutions. Our petition was launched on June 19th, the day before my birthday, actually. And we got over 1,500 signatures from, AMDA alum, AMDA current students, people who had never heard of AMDA in their lifetime. We also created a website with a list of grievances and problems that that we had gathered from the forums, as well as our own. As far as being in process, we have actually submitted those grievances and that petition to AMDA as of, I would say, towards the end of June. And we actually were able to have a meeting with the administration on July 2nd. They received it with openness and gratitude, which I think is super helpful, because these conversations are happening in the industry and they're happening nationwide at different performing arts schools. After that virtual meeting, which, I think was also met with a lot of openness and new information as far as to the steps that they are taking, because they then released a statement that, was even more tangible to hold them accountable to, as far as action items on their end. So actually, as of this morning, we submitted our official proposal and have just been waiting to hear back as far as what the decision will be.
That's amazing. Can you speak a little bit to some of the concrete change that you all are advocating for? I know there's advocacy around curriculum change and administrative change. And can you just talk about some of the demands that you all have been in conversation with AMDA around?
Well, at the root of this, I don't believe that students should have to do the extra labor of justifying their humanity on top of learning and sharpening their craft. Therefore, it just makes more sense to have somebody who has already started their career and who is an alum, who has been through the same system, to advocate for them. the panel before, like I said, I was just in here shouting and hollering. It's just like dismantling that white supremacy. Within We Move, we have also proposed creating original programming that will educate the institutions of the why and the reason for these microaggressions that we're seeing, which, if I may also say, that there's no microaggression that's too small to address, because as we see, these microaggressions add up and they only justify the macroaggressions such as police brutality that we are seeing. So when those go up, they're just further justifying the dehumanization of Black bodies. For example, a lot of the grievances that we saw within the school that I also experienced myself during my time there, that we're seeing at multiple performing arts institutions, is a disregard for how Black people wear their hair and our vast hairstyles. It's being compared through the lens of whiteness. And if we can make these changes happen within the school, they also have to parallel what's happening within the industry, because they both are informing each other. I can't combat what's happening in the school if what's happening in the industry is disputing what I'm trying to combat, and vice versa. So with that, we're trying to create a program, because there have been instances of Black students being told, you know, you shouldn't wear your natural hair. If you wear your hair in those box braids, those micro braids, you're only gonna get cast as a homegirl. And by the way, what's wrong with being cast as a homegirl anyway? Like, we're so multifaceted, we're not a monolith. And that implicit bias is what's allowing somebody to see that character of homegirl as somebody that's not unworthy of having a story being told, which is absolutely ridiculous. So with that example, there's no knowledge whatsoever of the methods of Black hair care that we go through that would then justify a teacher or an instructor telling a student, you need to wear your hair this way, you don't need to change your hair frequently. We change it up because that's how we maintain it. And if they have no idea about that, then they're really coming from an ignorant and uninformed place. So an example of one of the programs is, you know, I want to do a history of Black hair care in America and the history of the discrimination against that within the workplace and school, and calling upon the Crown Act. And then, you know, facilitating a conversation with an industry professional who specializes in hair design. So I think ultimately the root of it is just dismantling that white supremacy, that standard of whiteness for humanity, and not seeing anything outside of that as the other or an alternative.
Right. Yeah, that's powerful. And also, like, just this one thing that, you know, we go through as Black people, and there's a whole litany of work, right, that we have to do. So it's very exciting to see what you're doing, and I believe that really, really, really good fruit will come out of the work that you all are committed to. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right, that was really exciting. Now let's talk to Rebecca Kelly.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Good to see you again. Rebecca, you do so many things, and so much of your life and work is dedicated to this that we're talking about today. So we feel really honored at BAC to even have you here in this conversation. So thank you. In our pre-conversation, I mean, there was a few things that we all as a panel were wrestling with. One of the things that I brought up in the conversation was this idea of students maybe not even knowing what their rights are as students. And comparing that to, like, know your rights campaigns that happen outside of school and happen in terms of the framework of the criminal legal system, right? And you, part of your life was doing work within that institution. And so I'm just interested in, like, if there's a student out there or a group of students out there that are like, this feels like discrimination. This feels like something that's actually illegal. What do they have access to or not have access to? And can you speak a little bit to that? And if that could also take us into a conversation as well around some of these buzzwords you brought up that I think it's important for us to really understand the definitions of this diversity, this equity, this, that would be awesome.
Sure, thanks. A little feedback. Sorry about that. Thank you for having me. I'm really happy to be here, and it's so inspiring to hear about the student action. I love getting to hear that. It's so inspiring. So I'm honored to be here. Thank you. To answer this question, I was thinking about this. What are the legal levers? What do students have in front of them? And I was thinking about this in terms of lawsuits and litigation, and I want to speak to that because sometimes that's the thing. It's like, this feels illegal, it feels like discrimination. I want to bring a lawsuit. And I want to emphasize that the law is one tool in a bunch of other tools. And it's important to think about it that way rather than it is the tool I'm going to use, because the law is not rooted in justice. The law is not rooted in morality. The law is rooted in tradition and the establishment of what these particular rules are that govern our behavior. And that can be riddled with bias and oppression. I wish I could remember who says this quote, but slavery was legal, apartheid was legal, the Holocaust is legal. Law is a matter of power and not justice. So if you want to look to the law, look to it as a tool, but one that goes along with your people power. So the other things that are available to you are you, and all the things we were just hearing these students talk about. The collective, the power of you connecting with other students, unpacking your experiences, and starting to organize. I know we're going to be talking to Milta after this, and she has a lot to say around power analyses and racial analyses and what types of things you can do when you get into a collective like that. So I want to emphasize that, because even when we think about landmark legislation or landmark cases like Brown v. Board of Education, like that's part of a system of organizing. That's just not talked about. It's talked about like that case did the thing, but really it was people power along with this case that supported it, because when you work with other people and you start organizing together the way that we're hearing people do, as things change, as you learn more information, you can adjust your tactics to what's happening versus when you're in the law, is there, is going. So I want to just put that out there first to say that. But that said, if you do decide you want to go a legal route, like there are some things I wanted to share with folks. The first thing I want to share is this is not legal advice. I'm just sharing with y'all like some background of things I think that might be useful just to know and to think about in terms of discrimination. I'm going to talk about two particular areas of the law. So we have the Civil Rights Act. That applies to, in this case, we're talking about public institutions. So if you go to a public school, or if you go to a private school and you receive some federal funds, especially from the Department of Education, this is why you need a lawyer, someone help you suss out like whether this applies. But if you're there and it applies, then the two things I want to talk about are first, Title IX of the Civil Rights Act, that deals with gender discrimination. And I'm going to spend a little less time there just because one thing to say is if you have experienced gender discrimination, sexual assault, sexual harassment fits under that as well, you likely have a Title IX coordinator at your school. And that's one thing I want to make sure everybody knows. So should something happen, you can go to that person. They're required to respond to you and to bring you through a process. So that's one thing about your rights. The other is Title VI. Title VI of the Civil Rights Act deals with discrimination based on race, color, or national origin. So if you're in that space and you're like, I feel like I'm facing discrimination here, there's two ways that people discuss discrimination. There's intentional discrimination, and then there's disparate impact, which is like unintentional discrimination, which we hear a lot about, right? So the intentional discrimination, just if you were wanting to do this, the way that those processes happen, it's called burden shifting, which really what that means is you get to say what's going on in your school, the school gets to speak back to you, and then you get to speak again. You speak twice if you're the person who's bringing this case. So if you're saying there's intentional discrimination, what would you want to think about? What does that mean? It means that there's different treatment happening based on race, color, national origin in your educational programs or practices or resources. So that might look like something like a teacher saying, oh, I don't know how to give you feedback. I don't give feedback to students of color. That makes me uncomfortable. I don't give feedback to Black students, and that becoming a practice. Or we take all of the students of color and we put them in this program based on nothing other than the fact that they're students of color. So that might be something where you'd say expressly, there's different treatment and it's being rooted on race. So that might be what that claim looks like. And then the school has the opportunity to say, oh, we are doing that, but it's not based on race, it's based on something else.
Mm-hmm.
And then the student can say, there's something else that they're saying this is based on. That's a pretext. It really is about race, and I can show you. And if you can, then you would win that. So that's intentional discrimination. Disparate impact is unintentional piece I'm talking about. That is if you have a neutral policy. So no one's saying anything is about race, but the impact of that policy is discriminatory. It's harming the students of color more.
Right.
So that would look like something like, we only perform musicals from this particular era. These are just examples. We only perform musicals from this particular era. And because we only perform musicals from this particular era and we cast along with historically what that looked like, it just turns out we're casting all the white students and we're not casting students of color. So that's a neutral policy that's resulting in unequal access to an educational experiential opportunity, the opportunity to prepare for your field by being on the stage, right? So that might be a claim. Then the school has the opportunity to say, we do that, but we have a legitimate educational reason for doing that, and here's what it is. And then you have the opportunity to say, this is how it goes. This is why it takes a while. You have the opportunity to say, I see that reason, but there are multiple other alternative ways that you could do this, that you could achieve your legitimate educational aim and still not discriminate. And if you win that, then you win. So I wanted to walk y'all through that. So
no, that's amazing. And even before we get to the kind of breaking down some of these subjects you are hired by different institutions to work on, thinking about those neutral policies and how much labor it takes to enact impact through our legal system to rectify some of that. I'm thinking about on the other side of it, it's like if these institutions just understood the neutral policies effect on Black students, and that the bottom line, and to me, part of our conversation this weekend that I really held on tight to was that neutral policies that negatively impact Black students lead to Black people just not being educated.
Exactly.
Paying thousands and thousands and thousands. So we talk about like the miseducation, like there's like, some of these policies leave people not being educated at all. And we're going to talk a bit about that with Vicky as well, but I just wanted to put that out in the space. And if you have anything to add to that, I'm sure that's valuable for them to hear.
Just to emphasize, because of their race, just to really put that pin in it, like not getting the same educational opportunities, sometimes explicitly because of your race. Because I'm using those examples because they're real. The ones that I'm using, those are things that happen. So,
right. So when we have these conversations, when we start these conversations, what always comes up first is diversity and inclusion, as if it's like a supervillain, and that we need to find the team that can fight diversity and inclusion. And I'm not saying that is an objectively bad idea, diversity and inclusion, but can you kind of talk about maybe some misconceptions that people may have about the differences between equity and diversity inclusion work and undoing racism work, and kind of when you come into different institutions, what do you find in terms of their expectation of the work versus the work that really needs to happen?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. And the expectations versus what really needs to happen is exactly built into those terms. So that's the right question. Reference on the other panel. So if we're talking about inclusion, I'll start there. Inclusion. What does it mean to include someone? You're here and you're bringing them in. So this is already an expression of power.
Right.
Like we were saying the last thing. I have the table, I have the space, and I'm going to make it so that you can be in my space. So that's not justice. That's bringing people into a broken system. That's having training in assimilation, right? We talked about this over the weekend too. Like if you're just, and in the last panel, and people are speaking to it now, if you have a program that's saying, yeah, I'll include you in our white supremacist norms, in our white cultural norms, what you're saying is, again, from this last panel, is you're invited, but you can't wear your own clothes. So that's inclusion is not justice. It doesn't serve people of color, not really. And diversity is similar. I mean, diversity slides very easily into tokenization, which is, having something that cosmetically looks like a difference, which isn't entirely useless. I mean, it's nice when you're young or even when you're older to be able to see what you want to be.
Right.
But that is not the end of that story. When people are just shuffled in and out, it's again, it's not justice. And that representation without any real change is cosmetic and perpetuates the same systems and is right back into that inclusion space. Like, I'm 2 or 3 of the sea of white faces, and we're supposed to be happy with that. So there's nothing just about that. It doesn't serve us. Equity is about meeting everyone where they are and providing needs that are going to genuinely move us forward. So that's where I really view myself as in equity. What does it mean? Because for me, when I talk about equity, justice is inherent in that, and power shifts are inherent in that. So if I go into an institution, like if I'm in a school, the first thing is, all right, well, we need to talk to the students, particularly the students of color, and we're going to uplift their voice. And that's true for any other institution as well.
Right.
Pipelines and pathways to leadership, analyzing power, who has it, what's the demographic of the people who have it, working through that, and creating space for the people of color in that institution to heal and to grow. Because we talk a lot about abolishing, well, let me not say that. We talk a lot about getting rid of institutions and saying we're going to build our own. And I think that's beautiful. And if there are people who are still in these institutions, we can't just leave them there.
Right.
We have to make sure that we're supporting the people who are within these institutions to feel pride, to feel agency, and to shift things so that they can move through those systems with that pride, with that agency, and make change. So I try to operate in both of those spaces.
That distinction is super important. And like I was talking about earlier, we'll have a resource guide for institutions that Michaela will talk about a bit later. And your information is definitely there. And I think the work that you have been doing is incredibly impactful. So thank you so much for everything. We really appreciate the conversation. Thanks. Okay. I'm getting smarter by the minute. How about you, everyone? Let's bring in the last member of this part of the panel, Vicky Washington.
Oh, hello. Hi.
Hey.
Oh.
So Ms. Vicky, we've been talking for an hour and some change now. I just want to get right into the meat of it with you, and kind of pick up on a part of the conversation that we talked about this weekend. And the first part of it is just speaking to your philosophy as an educator and director when you are coming into institutions and working with students. What is it that you are bringing that's distinctive to your work that may be unique to that child's experience thus far? And to that same token, if that can lead us into that conversation around what do you find when you get on these campuses? What do you see happen to students?
Yeah, thank you so much thank you, Broadway Advocacy, and thank you for having me. Because I am able and have been fortunate to be able to come into these places and direct, one of the things that I find, and I'm regrettably not surprised to find it, is students who, as we've heard on the earlier panel, who have been going through training programs for whatever length of time they've been there and have never worked with a Black director, a Black professor, who students who are not seen, students who are not heard, students whose life, who they are is not valued, quite frankly.
Right.
That's one of the things I find as far as the reason I come is because I already kind of know that. And I come because one of the things that both my theater work and my anti-racism work causes me to feel and to do is to really work at helping people wherever they are, whatever age they are and wherever they are in their journey, to really start to examine and unpack the toxicity of internalized racial oppression and how white supremacy, how we breathe and eat it and manifest it. So much so that we will oftentimes, one of the young women earlier today said, I wasn't really understanding what was happening to me. I think she was the woman from Baldwin Wallace, that I really didn't see that that's what this is, because that's one of the things that internalizing racial oppression and internalizing white supremacy will do. white supremacy exists to power and privilege white people and to disempower everybody else. And so I come wanting to make sure that I give all of us, me included, because I still have, I have my own struggles understanding how not to allow the internalization of it to overtake me. But I come in knowing that that's going to be there, knowing that I am the token coming in to direct the August,
Right.
direct the Nottage, but also coming in to say that this work is worthy, this work is necessary. You are worthy, you are necessary. Our stories are important, our stories must be heard, and our stories are valuable. And it's really important that we're able to come together and work on that. I love this conversation today because it's really getting to the meat of, it's not about inclusion, this thing of, well, you know, y'all all come on in and basically get on the picture for the brochure so we can bring some more of y'all in 4 years, but we're not going to ever really intentionally speak to or listen to your stories and see what needs to be said and what needs to be done and what needs to be presented and what needs to be programmed. And so that's what I come in with, knowing that I'm coming into a system that is a microcosm of white supremacy. We live in a nation and our institutions are going to be institutions of white supremacy. And so coming in, knowing that and understanding that you have students and faculty all along the spectrum, some of whom have some knowledge about what it is they're really grappling with, and some of them who do not, but always centering them, our stories, and the value of them in the most excellent way possible. So that's what I.
We talked about something that really just has stayed with me over the past couple of days, which is, well, I'll put it like this. When I was in school, I was fortunate to be one of the handful of Black students that could get cast or would get cast in something. And sometimes part of that was me creating my own work, but the handful of that. And what I never thought about was that there's an entire other cohort of students that are going through the entire program and never getting the work, because it's work, it's vocational work, it's not a privilege, it is not a prize. They're never getting the vocational work training that it takes to understand how to navigate this business. And that alone is racist. And you brought up this idea of like going into institutions and finding students who are in their senior year and had never been on the stage before. Can you speak to how detrimental that is?
It's heartbreaking, period, because I think Rebecca mentioned it earlier, we had talked about it on the weekend. When you come into an institution, somebody's paying for it. It's either coming out of your pocket or your full ride, all the more power, but it's getting paid for. And every student should have the privilege of learning and being taught. And what I see is, to your example, what you just mentioned was the example I raised. I walk into to come in and direct a show, and I have people auditioning, and I'm looking at their resume, and they've never done a production in 4 years as an acting major. Not on the small stage, not on the large stage, not on the black box, nowhere. They've never done a show and they're an acting major. And I'm thinking, well, how is this possible? Because you and I know there's only so much you can learn in scene work and in monologue study, and working in a show builds show muscles. Production builds production muscles. And so you have students who are not receiving the education that they're paying for. On top of that, one of the things that you and I know, we've seen it, students who are in class and working, and because for whatever reason, the professor, Rebecca gave an example, might not feel comfortable giving criticism to a student. That's, that student ends up not getting taught, getting the benefit of the kind of expertise that this instructor is supposed to have, that comes and says, well, let's try this. Have you thought about this? What are you doing here? That doesn't happen. It's, well, yes, that's really good. You go ahead and do that. And we see that so much, especially in musical theater. You know, bring the juice. Do what you do, that thing. Yeah. And that's infuriating, unfortunate, and racist. It's not, it is a practice that is sometimes intentional, sometimes not intentional, but nevertheless, it causes harm. The impact is harm, and the impact is students who are graduating and have not had the benefit of the education and the training that students who are not Black or not students of color had.
And thinking about that kind of system that's in place, what it causes is for us to turn in on ourselves and to devour each other, right? If I'm already coming into school as a young person knowing that they will only let one of us on the stage at a time. So then what does that do to my image of not only myself, but everyone else that looks like me?
Well, one of the things that happens in the way that that's another tool of supremacy and white supremacy, in that it makes exceptions of certain people and makes them think that they are exceptional. So as when I first heard that, that was my response, because I was one of those kids, right?
Right.
You know, you're the exceptional, you're not like them, or you talk that way, or you can do it. Yeah, you're the exception. So you are pulled from the group. You're made to feel that you are exceptional and therefore the exception, and vice versa. But more importantly, you are not part of the group. So sometimes you turn in, as you say, you turn on others. Sometimes you turn in. Sometimes, you know, it plays out in all kinds of ways. Most all of not good. The good way it plays out is you get together and you organize those other students, like much earlier was saying, and you say, whoa, let's get together and let's figure out what this is, and let's do what we can do. One of the things that we did talk about also this weekend that I think is really important is, in this moment, what you all are doing as an organization, coming together to understand that white supremacy, part of the reason it's able to exist in the way it does is because when people of color and black people and other people of color prop it up. And so we're coming together to say, we're not propping it up anymore. We're not propping it up anymore. Roberta Flack has a song where she says, Pharaoh, my people, let Pharaoh go. It's time for us to let Pharaoh go.
Well, that is a very dynamic sentence to end on. I know how unbelievable you are and the work that you do is in the world and on these institutions, and I just want to thank you for just spending a little time helping us break down some of these concepts. And for everyone watching, we will make sure you know how to get in touch with Vicki and her work. Thank you so much, Vicki. We really appreciate it.
Yes.
All right, so next up, I want to bring in a woman that I deeply love personally and whose work has already impacted and changed my life in many, many ways, to come and talk to us and give us a framework to think about this kind of work, particularly for institutions who are going to start doing this work soon, or who have been doing this work. So I want to bring up Milta, if she's there. Hello. Milta, you look amazing.
I did what most of
we hear you. There you go.
Hi.
Hi.
I've been here so thankful, grateful, and so full. Just being filled by the incredible conversation that's been going on, and it just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. My gratitude. Thank you. So I am here.
And Milta does unbelievable undoing racism work and cultural work and spiritual work as well. we're towards the end of our program, and we all know, well, you and I know we could spend hours and hours and hours together and have. But if you can give us, and I'm just going to throw this prompt out there, and in a quick kind of summation, what should institutions, how should they be thinking about this work moving forward?
So I think if we actually just take a breath and go back to one of the statements that were made, I believe it was the professor who said that this is no longer about the table. People keep talking about, we need a seat at the table, and that may be true. In some conceptualized way, this table needs to be reconceptualized, right? So that was said already. We heard that the law does not support the concepts of integrity and justice and honor. Okay, that's not what the law is about. We also heard that there is a deep and real form of socialization that it's called internalized racial inferiority. It actually is one aspect of internalized racial socialization. The other aspect, because you have to have, if it's any coin has two sides. So when you have internalized racial inferiority, then you must have internalized racial superiority. So what we need to begin to do is to know what we know. That's number one. Know what we know.
Mm-hmm.
And that means that we have spent 450 years of resistance. Sankofa, the bird that looks back and has the marvelous egg in their mouth, okay, which is the future. But they're looking back because it is on the shoulders of those that came before us that we stand. So we must know what we know, but our feet are pointing forward. And that means 50 years from now, what is the vision of these institutions, and how do we, as Black, Indigenous, and people of color at large, begin to define our place? Our place. And that definition cannot be expected to be given to us by those that have come to be known as white, because they are not fixed for that. They are not socialized for that. They don't even have the conceptual capacity to move beyond what they have had to give up to become that thing called white, right? So the intellectualization of what can be has to really move from the head to the heart,
Mm-hmm.
and it has to be those 17 inches that are moved in a circle. And that circular movement means that we have to understand that there is no conceptualization that can come unless it is being led by Black people and people of color.
Mm-hmm.
We must underline that first. Second to that is that we have to be able to see it as a process, not a place. And that so that when we set our strategies and when we conjure the vision, that vision has to be assessed in different ways. White data is not going to give us what we need. So the ideology around organizing is something that is part of our epistemology, because when we think of ourselves, you've heard it here. Every person that has spoken, they've spoken about the we. The I is white supremacist. The we is how we have survived. So the intense intelligentsia that comes from our we, the reimagining, the revisioning of what this table of power and decision making is, what is needed for us to be able to enter and exit institutions. Let's be clear that, there are concepts that have been adopted, like PWI, predominantly white institutions, but before they were PWIs, they were historically white colleges and universities. That's why we have historically Black colleges. So we can say PWI, but that's giving them a pass. And the fact is that we have to call it what it is. There's never been integration. What we have done is we have forced the sitting of people of color and Black people, but we have never had the legitimate power within the context of these institutions, because every institution, theater and beyond,
Right.
created when there was the legalized, codified white supremacy as the lead. So whether it is the institution itself or its genesis. So what we have to do, and this is my biggest bias, my national tagline is that when the artists get it, when the culture's creators get it, when you're singing it, you're dancing it, you know, you're playing it on stage, when it becomes the lifeblood of who we are, then will the culture have to shift. Because up until then, we can always find excuses. And the fair part of this, and this was said before, that the ones that need to be in the forefront, we must be willing to accept that this is what we do, that this is who we are, and we must have a racial analysis that has a language that we share and a definition that we understand for the words that we're using, because words do not translate. So we must know when we're talking about race and racism, what does that actually mean? And fundamentally, if we do not have a clear understanding of that, then everything else that we think we know will be confused. We'll just be confused.
That's amazing. We have to hold you there, Milton, but we will definitely make sure everyone has resources. But the big thing that I want to spring out there is that racial analysis and that shared vocabulary is so important. So thank you so much. We appreciate your work. We love you, and we will, I'm sure, be seeing you again in our BAC world and community. So thank you so much.
Take care.
I think now I bring up my colleagues. Hi, colleague.
Not fair.
Whoa.
There's too much to talk about.
I'm mad stressed, y'all. Mad stressed.
No.
The notes. Can we talk about the notes? Can we talk?
Yeah.
You want to lead us, and then we'll each like drop like a little nugget of something that we learned, and then wrap up.
Absolutely, yes. First, if Jalen, Britton, and I, if we can just take a breath together. Thank you, Elizabeth, for continuing with us.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Yeah.
I just want to honor the fact that, one, as a team, Britton, Jalen, and I are in the back like, oh, we've gone over time, right? And I'm over here feeling like so bad. And then I realize the people that we are talking to right now are blessing us. They're blessing our audience members. They are blessing me. They're blessing every single person who has access to this space right now. And any feelings of, dang it, we've taken up too much of your time has to like go away. I have to remove it because I haven't taken up space most of my life. And most of these people have consolidated or made themselves smaller for so long that it is time for us to recognize and give them the space that they deserve. So I just want to honor that and say thank you guys so much for staying with us and bearing throughout. Now I'm going to talk about the next step. We are going to do a for us, by us resource guide for our students, right? So essentially, coming soon, we're going to have a guide that has a bunch of resources we've got from a lot of different institutions, students and current students and alumni, such as BTA, We Move Advocacy. We've even gotten WebCo involved in their alumni advisory committee. Even BOCO will be represented, and many more within this resource guide to kind of give you an idea of what you can do, what a petition looks like, how you call somebody out, and what do you do when you go to your administration to have these conversations. So that's coming soon. Keep your eyes out for that, guys.
Yeah, and I just want to thank everyone for tuning in and hanging in there with us and absorbing this information. And I just think a big thing that I'm taking with me is that this work isn't just for the individual, it's for the community, and it's for the whole, and it's for everyone coming up, so that when they step on campuses, they're not negotiating their humanhood just to participate in their vocation. And so I'm looking forward to seeing all the change that hopefully happens.
Amen. And thanks for saying that, Michaela. That was dope. I needed that. Thank you for that reminder of space and who this is. I want to make sure that we thank our ASL interpreters, Elizabeth and Lynette from Invest in Access. Y'all are fabulous and y'all are so down with us. Thank you so much for your effort, your work, your craft. I also want to say that there will not be an outer circle space tonight. Steep apologies for that. We had an emergency and we wanted to share. Please follow and engage with us on social media with your thoughts. We're going to be up and still available to answer questions. Please go to our pages, go to our website, BWayAdvocacyCoalition.org and BWay for BLM. That's where you'll also see that resource sheet that Michaela is talking about. And I want to thank Dr. T for reminding our institutions and the people who are sitting in positions of power to make the choice to allow people to show up in the clothes that they are in and to really like reckon with how they're asking people to be invited into a space. I will not let that ever leave me. Am I missing anything else, family?
No.
I don't think so. I think we did it.
Let's do the work.
Thanks, Drea. Thanks, Rob. Thanks, BNC family.
Thank you, Angela Johnson.
Yeah.
Thank you, Amber.
Yes, thank you, Amber.
Thank yous.
Yeah. Thank you, all the panelists. Thank you, all the students who gave us their voices. I also want to share that there are a lot of students doing this work, and I think it'll be amazing if there's a coalition of student groups doing this work. So that feels like something else we should probably think about tackling. And yeah, love, 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 work, work, work. Thank you for your time, and thank you for the space. Love everybody.
Yes, thank you guys. Have a good night. Thank you again to Invest in Access, Angela Johnson. We are so indebted to you. Thank you, Elizabeth and Lynette. Have a good night, everyone.